Well, it's a pleasure right now to be joined by one of my favorites, a great in LSU football history from the late 80s, part of 2 SEC championships. He had 2,700 yards from scrimmage and 24 touchdowns. One touchdown, a little more famous than the rest. It is Earthquake Eddie Fuller. Eddie, thanks for coming down, man.
Thanks for having me, Jacques. I appreciate that, man. Glad to be here.
And we joke about the Earthquake game. Last year, Eddie and I visited, and Eddie said, Jacques, that game was boring. That was a boring game. Now,
right.
the overall game, there wasn't a whole lot of scoring, but man, to this day, one of my favorite finishes, favorite drives in LSU history, that final drive.
Yeah, I tell you, man, it was one of those. Now it's obviously bigger than what it was when it happened. But I can, once again, even when I recount that story, it was just a slug. It was a slugfest the whole game, and that was for me, that was a redeeming moment because people knew I dropped one. I was out of bounds in the back of the end zone, so that kind of culminated everything, and it kind of brings me to where I am today.
When you're out and you're in the business world, still working hard, and people see your name or hear your name, do they still remember? They still talk about it with you?
They do. And you know, in a lot of cases, it's an icebreaker for me and for them as well. You know, I've had customers where I'm kind of sitting in the waiting room, and you know, they see the name, they go back, they pull up Google, and then they come back and with a refreshed, renewed introduction. So it's always fun to be able to have those conversations, and you know, LSU is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, and a hot topic these days is whether or not student athletes should be paid, and I think about that, though. I think you weren't paid as a player, but LSU opened up so many doors for you after football because you caught that pass.
Absolutely, and you know, and that's been an ongoing debate, obviously, for years. You know, I played a million years ago, and that was still a topic of conversation. So I'm just interested to see how it plays out because, you know, I played professionally for a few years, and I just recall, you know, when it's a job versus where you're at LSU, you have a different mentality because the expectation is different, obviously. So I'm just concerned or a little curious to see how these players that now they can generate income, will they be focused more on trying to figure out how they can put the headlights or the spotlight on themselves so they can generate the income, or still have that same team mindset concept because, you know, you're out there to win games and win championships.
Well, since you brought that up, I'd like to talk to you about that. So how old were you, Eddie Fuller, in 1988 when you catch that pass against Auburn?
1988, I was 20 years old. So I was just turned 20 that summer. So yeah, I was still a youngster back in those good days.
So you win the game, you catch the touchdown. What was that night like? Did you go in the locker room, you guys all celebrate? Did you hit a local night spot? I mean, what'd you do? Well, so
my fondest memory of that night was being beat up all night, winning the game, celebrating with my teammates. But I actually went to my room because I was so, number one, I was exhausted. Number two, I was sore. And I think I slept to the next morning till breakfast, and you know, we had meetings on that Sunday night. So it wasn't, you know, people probably figured I went out and had bottles of champagne, but you know, old military brat, very disciplined. You know, we took care of business, and I needed to, you know, get well for the following week.
Well, there you go, a grounded guy. And so I'm just thinking to myself, okay, if that happened this year, would you be thinking in your mind, instead of celebrating with my teammates, hey, we won this game together, what events can I make an appearance at this week? Yeah. What endorsements can I get this week? You know,
yeah.
I was kind of joking in my head thinking, you know, some car dealerships, you know, the deals are so hot, the earth is shaking down here at Jerry Lane or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point. And once again, I think it changes the mindset of the college athlete now, especially those, you know, everybody wants to be able to take advantage of that because obviously the doors are now open, but everyone won't be able to take advantage of that because, you know, the bottom line is if you've got to produce, obviously, to be able to reap the benefits of that. So it's going to, once again, I'm just curious to see how this plays out, having played the next level and kind of seeing it because it's your job.
Yeah, I'm just curious about, and obviously Tommy Hodson was on posters back then, and Harvey Williams and yourself, you know, you guys were kind of viewed as stars. But, you know, when does jealousy creep in? When does it kind of eat away at the team camaraderie?
Yeah.
And then, the second some guy doesn't have a good game, then people say, well, you shouldn't have done those commercials or endorsements or whatever. Yeah.
Those are great points. And the other point, the parents. Parents are so involved with these kids now. So, there's pressure on all sides with these kids. And I see these kids, I have an opportunity to speak a lot of high schools and interact with some of these kids. And, you see these great players, and it's great to have a foundation with family, but sometimes family they cross the line a little bit too, and the kids are already under a lot of pressure as it is, and I think that added it plays a role, and just what you said, I mean, jealousy, and the kid may not be that way, but if mom and dad are pushing, or uncles and aunts are saying, hey, you need to be more vocal, you need to get more playing time, I'm going to Coach O, I mean, there are other cans that could be open.
Yeah. Well, we joke, sometimes we joke about Coach O gets paid all these millions, and then we sometimes joke he's still underpaid, because of all the stuff he has to deal with.
Right.
Those 100 guys on the roster who have parents and family and everything.
Right.
Now, the flip side of getting paid is, a guy like you were in the NFL for a number of years, but you could have still, not earned life-changing money, but you could have, had some new clothes. You could have had a few other things. Nick Brossette, I visited with him the other day. Had a very nice senior year.
Yeah.
Didn't pan out to a pro career, not in the NFL at least, but he could have earned some money when he was hot, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and once again, I mean, you're bringing up a lot of great points. I've been having conversations with some of my former teammates that were around at the same time I was, and later guys too as well. So it's the conversation. It's one of those welcome things. Guys are glad to see these kids, athletes being able to kind of take advantage of the opportunity. But then a lot of guys, they reminisce and kind of figure out, well, man, I could have, what could I have done had this been in place back then? So you can't go backwards, but once again, it's a good thing for these kids, and I hope that it works out for everybody, all parties involved.
Eddie, I'm thinking about some of these old school coaches who are still kind of bumping around. Pete Jenkins.
Coach Jenkins, yeah.
Jerry Sullivan.
Coach Sullivan. Right.
And then I think about the late, great Bill Ornsparger.
Yeah, it's a great
what
one.
they would have been saying about, you doing what? You're doing a commercial?
Yeah.
You're doing an appearance?
Yeah, and those old school mindsets. So I think, you fast forward that would have, I think that would have probably went against the grain, because those guys were, once again, old school. You when you're on the field, that's what you're supposed to be thinking about, team concept. So, but to the credit of these coaches now, the environment's different, right? Mm-hmm. So Coach O and all the coaches across the country have to adjust to that, because now that's just an added facet now into the game that they're going to have to kind of figure out how to deal with, because even in recruiting, that's probably going to be something that comes up as well. So it's, look, with Coach O making the money, they may deserve a little bit more, because, they wear a lot of different hats for those kids, man.
Yeah. And Eddie Fuller, what if you went up to Bill Ornsparger and said, Coach, I'm opting out of the Sugar Bowl? Or you would have gone up to Mike Archer and say, the Hall of Fame Bowl, I'm not going to play in that game.
Well, I can tell you this much. So I know these kids have an opportunity when they opt out, they can be on the sideline. I don't think that would have taken place with those two coaches. I can tell you, the minute you mentioned anything like that to Bill, he would have given me a ticket to Leesville. That would have been it for me. So once again, the environment's changed, and I understand. Look, it's a good thing. Yeah. But there's just I think there's just a lot more. Just the dynamics are a little bit different.
Well, you can't argue with Jamar Chase, right? He opted out, and he was still a very, very high draft pick.
Yeah, and he's one of those ones that you see kind of how he dominated the game when he left. And some people think, oh, okay, a guy leaves, he's out of competition, he's going to be rusty. These kids now, man, they don't just leave and disappear. They disappear with some form of discipline on their mind. So they're disappearing. They're probably working out a couple times a day. They're eating right, and they understand the business side of things. Back in my day, we wanted to get to the NFL, but we didn't take it that serious. And these kids, they have to. They really do.
Yeah, Eddie, I'm thinking, okay, The next group of high school kids are going to be the most highly trained, highly skilled group of high school kids that we've ever seen. And then the next group is going to be even more highly skilled than that. They are being trained at such an early age on fundamentals and speed and all these different things these days, with all these different kind of, traction, and Derek Stingley's father's got a place that he's training kids at.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where these kids now, the exposure, it's a lot sooner now. I mean, I have a nephew over at Menard, and he's been going to these, the 707s. We did that, but it wasn't organized to where you competed with the best across the country, and that right there will help you. It helps sharpen everything, because you know kind of who you're competing against, and it can either make you want to work harder to be in that conversation, or you can withdraw. Most of these kids these days, they're fierce competitors. My nephew, he's a late bloomer, but this guy, I took him to the spring game. He wants to know everything, and I try to give him as much information as I can. But his peers that have been doing it for years they have a leg up on them. So yeah, they have a tremendous advantage when they come to LSU. I mean, things that I probably learned my first year as a freshman, these kids probably learned it when they were in junior high. So it's a little bit, the atmosphere is different with these kids, and you see it on the field.
And the social media aspect of it as well. You were always a humble, grounded guy. Maybe a guy like Harvey Williams. Harvey, love you. He might have gotten himself in trouble with a tweet, or why did I only get 15 carries, or those kind of things that go on, where players can go complain about their coaches. All the fans can see it.
Those are, and I always kind of check that that's an added additional distraction, is what it is, because it's a distraction, it's a challenge. These kids are already navigating what they're navigating, whatever they're doing, but you add that social media component, and you're right, man. It can it could lift you, or it can sink you, and you just have to at least try to be mature enough to kind of figure it out. I mean, Stingley he's a great kid. I mean, he's got all these accolades, he's got all this notoriety, but you don't hear a whole bunch about him. I mean, he just kind of goes about his business. He's one of the best players in the country, and a guy like that, many teams and people will try to kind of hitch their wagons to him, because he's the type of player you want.
The social media presence, kids they're pressured to quote unquote build a brand,
right?
And sometimes I joke, you're a human being, not a pair of blue jeans, but everyone wants you to build a brand, and
and that's big. I still communicate a lot with the NFL PAs who are retired. So that's a lot of things that they're doing now. A lot of the conversations that we're having and Zoom meetings is about building brands. I mean, guys, they want to have the same level of success when they leave the game as when they're in the game. So that's something that's big, and it's trickling down to the college kids now. I mean, it's something that's being taught. Probably one of the best brand builders out there is Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, this guy he's on everything, and he understands. But he learned early, because he had, I've talked to Shaq every now and then, but he had some great mentors back when he was, when that was the thing. So it's definitely bode him well to have that presence, and these kids are kind of picking up from that.
Yeah, and he always had a great personality. He was always very funny. Made fun of himself. I think it was a Taco Bell commercial where he couldn't make free throws or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
And so he did a great job with that. Let's see here. Eddie Fuller, these days, how involved are you as a fan of LSU football? Are you a Monday morning quarterback, or are you just kind of, hey, my time is done, I'm a casual viewer, or how do you?
Yeah, I tell you what, Jacques, I'm probably more of a casual guy. In my course of business, now I'm a great listener, so I listen to all these people that maybe blew out knees when they were in junior high, and they could have had a college career or whatever the case may be. But I'm just one of those guys. I love watching the Tigers. I support these kids because having been one of those guys, and I think a lot of us guys if we are critical, we're critical to other guys who have played. I have conversations with Dalton Hilliard, one of the greats. I talked to the Kevin Mawais, who was my high school teammate. I talked to a lot of these guys, and we have discussions about the program, what's going on in the program, and we try to help as much as we can because as much as we don't like it, we're always engaged in a conversation somewhere. About athletics, about LSU. Now with everything that's been going on for the past year, it's just been, I've gotten bombarded with a lot of questions, and obviously don't have any answers, or insight, but I still love LSU.
2019 was the greatest thing ever, right? In terms of you could not have written a better script. It was almost too much to digest, too much to absorb all the great things that happened. Right. Then last year, not only was the on-the-field product disappointing, there was a lot of things off the field that have been going on and everything. Do you think fans, if Ogeron has a bounce back 10-2 regular season or something like that, they'll look at last year and say, oh, that was a COVID year, that wasn't really football, throw it out? I
think so. LSU fans are there. They're very, I would say they're a little bit forgiving, not a whole bunch, but they're very passionate about the program and about the players and about the coaches and just about the overall, just kind of the state of the union with LSU. So I really believe if Coach comes out and they've got a lot of talent from what I've seen and heard. If he comes out and gives a good on the field showing, I think a lot of those folks that were wavering will. It won't take much to win them back. People are ready for football. Especially after last year, the year, and then with the pandemic, so people are just ready to get out.
Couldn't go to the games. Hey, stay home. Don't come here. Pretty much.
People want to be in Tiger Stadium, so that place is going to be rocking. And I'll be there a couple times this year just to take it in as well. But folks are ready. You
have any opinion on these running backs, Tyreen Davis-Price, John Emery? They've both had their moments, but I think the feeling is they want a more consistent rushing attack this year.
Well, I think the biggest thing with being an effective running back is just being able to do everything. You've got to block, you've got to pass. You've got to be able to catch the ball. You've got to be able to do it all. And I think. That's probably where they've had some inconsistencies. You haven't had the guy that can do it all. But I think these guys, as far as their experience is concerned and their talent, they're what you have. And then you've got some young guys in the pipeline that are going to be able to help bolster that running attack too. So look, running back by committee, there's nothing ever wrong with that because the way I looked at it is that it kind of helps save some tread for the next level if you happen to make it there. But that healthy positional competition is what makes you better anyway, and those are some pretty good backs. They're big guys, they're capable guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing them run this year.
Do you know Kevin Falk?
Yeah, I know Kevin Falk.
Yeah,
he's only one of the greatest running backs at LSU. Oh, yeah, I know.
But do you have a relationship with him? Do you know him? In terms of. After the career he had in the NFL, he could be playing golf. He doesn't need to be working, so to speak. But he seems pretty passionate about, hey, I don't want to screw this up. I want to do a good job as the running backs coach here.
Yeah, Kev's one of those guys. He's a pretty humble guy. You're not gonna see him flaunting anything out there. He's a former top of the line running back at both levels. And I think just having a conversation with him, being with him, he wants to do the best job that he can. Number one, because it's his alma mater. Number two, he doesn't want to let these kids down. And number three, he doesn't want to let his coaching staff down. So he's committed. He's in it. He's got some, to have a guy like him. I would have killed to have a guy like him being my coach just because of all the experiences. So he can teach you things that the typical coach won't be able to. With 14, 15 years of NFL experience. I'm pretty sure he's got a lot of tricks of the trade to show those kids.
All right, a few memories down memory lane with Eddie Fuller. So, just the earthquake, the reception, that gets played on the SEC network when they're promoting the college football season. If you go into Tiger Stadium, they're going to slide that thing into no matter what highlight of history that they're talking about or whatever. It's like the Michael Jackson Beat It album, man. You were that is one of the greatest ever that's never going to go away. It's going to be played over and over again, huh?
Right.
So So I know you caught a lot of other passes and you scored a lot of
Right.
other touchdowns, but just to be part of that and to see it replayed and relived over and over again.
Yeah, look, it's an honor. And when you think about Billy Cannon, his run. I used to come in contact with him periodically, and I mean he's a great guy, and just to be remembered kind of in that same breath, that conversation. And then it just keeps on giving, like a gift or something. So look, I'm flattered, to be honest with you. Look, I was only a kid that wanted to come to LSU, wanted to get a degree, wanted to make just have do better than my parents did. Obviously, that's what we all want to do. But I got a lot more than what I kind of bargained for. So
yeah,
good.
I remember one time I was doing a story on that game, a recap, and one of the local media guys said, "Man, they are so tired of talking about that stupid earthquake game, man. Stop talking about that, And then I've heard Tommy Hodson in the past joke, I threw for 9,000 yards, but my career's been reduced to one pass.
Yeah.
And he loves it, and he's not griping or anything. He's just being funny about it. But
and look, me and him joke about it because once again, kind of like I mentioned to you, it's bigger now than what it was when we actually played the game. We won the game. All this other stuff happened that yearly it got bigger and
things
bigger.
Get romanticized as
Absolutely.
the years go on.
And I think at that time, Tiger Stadium, I think it was maybe 80,000 or something. Yeah. Well, I think probably about 4 million people were at Tiger Stadium. As many people as I talked to that were at the game. So it's look, I enjoy it. Typically, I don't bring up the conversation. Everybody else does, but I love to kind of get
people like me still bringing you in here.
Man, I love leaning in and listening to how people were affected. But bottom line is we won, and that's what matters.
Yeah, Verge Osbury says, well, they only had to score one touchdown. We were on the field the whole night.
Yeah, well, and then I have to always thank the defense. I see Eric Hill a lot, so Big Eric, he's one that you want to thank whenever you see him. But it was
Ron Sancho, a guy who did not really look like a football player, right? But it was a great linebacker.
He was a great linebacker, and it was a total team effort. I'll be honest with you, Jacques. It was a total. It was a total team effort. The defense, Auburn that year, we shouldn't even been on the field with them, number one. Their offense was high-powered. Their defense, I don't even want to talk about that. That was different.
The late Ruffin Rodrigue, I think I visited with him last summer. We were talking about this game. He said, far and away, the best defense we had ever played against.
Yeah, they were.
Top to bottom.
They were. They were athletic. They were all over the place. And, for our defense to keep us in the game the way that they did, you got to, once again, hats off to those guys for even, keeping us in the game to give us just that little bit of door opening to score.
In today's Twitter world and instant gratification and impatient to wait on that final touchdown these days, people, they would have been throwing their remotes at the TV. But to me, in my opinion, that's what makes the touchdown so great is that you went to Florida the week before and couldn't score a touchdown.
That's right.
And then I think it was 8 or 9 quarters, right, until you finally got that touchdown and hung on for dear life and got it done.
Absolutely.
And then the defense had to go back on the field, I think, with 1:40 left.
Yeah.
A field goal would have won the game for Auburn.
Absolutely. And then that was I think about it when having a conversation. It's kind of a turning point game for our year. We ended up being co-SEC champions that year, but I think that game was the pivotal game that kind of helped us to kind of resuscitate things the way we were going. So it was, once again, that game had a lot of different meanings to different people, but for me, all I remember is Tommy Hodson coming back to me multiple times, and that I don't think that ever happened to me at any point in time in my career. And I think just Coach Archer, those guys just having the confidence in me, and Coach Sullivan. I half of the practice I would run running back, and the other half I would run receiver just so I could understand the coverages and defenses. So I think that helped propel me to the next level because, going up to Buffalo and being with Jim Kelly and those guys, I ran wide out a lot. So I think I attributed that to just what I learned at LSU and with the coaching staff and the players.
Well, you caught 15 touchdowns in your career and you ran for 9.
I
looked that up.
Yeah, you're right, man. So it was all good.
You were a great receiver. And in the day of name, image, and likeness, You know, Tommy Hodson had the Hollywood good looks. He was the star quarterback. He would have made a killing back then for sure.
Absolutely.
And he could have made a killing moving forward. It's just not in Tommy's personality to put himself out there like that. You know, he's always just been very, hey, I appreciated what I did, and I appreciate all the love and everything, but I'm kind of, you know, I'm on the sideline now.
Yeah, well, look, Tom is one of those guys that you don't, he's, you know, he just leads by example, and he's always been that way. And you've never really, whenever he raised his voice, you still couldn't hear him because he was still. I mean, that's how low he spoke. But you know, I think Kentucky, when he bit through his tongue and he came back and played with all this blood coming out, I think a newfound respect for me. You know, if this guy can do it, I don't think there's anything that can happen to me on this field that I better not get my butt up and try to get back out there. So no, Tom, that's my guy.
And so the earthquake reception, you got a helmet on, obviously. Talking to players over the years, I asked them, did you hear the crowd? No, I didn't hear anything, or I blacked out, or whatever. Did the earth shake, Eddie Fuller? Did you feel the earth shake?
I didn't. I tell you what, I didn't feel the earth shake, but I can tell you for me, and I think those descriptions that you mentioned, people blacking out, not hearing anything, you know, amidst all that noise. Everything slowed down for me. I mean, everything was in slow motion. I think when I saw the ball when Tommy released it, I saw a defensive lineman, and I think I'm telling you, I think the ball kind of tipped somebody's finger, and I could see that as far away as I was, and the ball I think it took an hour to get to me, and that was evident because I almost dropped it again. So everything slowed down. You know, after the play, I didn't hear anything. I think Halliburton, Ronnie tried to squeeze the life out of me. I don't even remember that. So it was, once again, man, that's one of those magical moments that I can replay it in my mind, see it on TV, and just kind of, you know, get goosebumps, you know, when you see it.
Even to this day, when the play is replayed, your heart kind of stops for a moment. Is he going to catch it? We all know that you're going to catch it, but still, it's like, is he going to catch it? You know, there's that split second there where you elevate to get your hands on the ball, and
absolutely,
just a tremendous memory. And then the cutaway of Mike Archer raising his hands as soon as the touchdown is made and everything.
Yeah, and you know, and it's the funny thing about that is you know, drop passes and everything else, and me and Tommy, you know, Tom in the huddle, we just looked at each other. It was just a glance. It wasn't, you know, he didn't say anything. He didn't nod his head. He just looked at me. I looked at him, and I'm thinking, okay, this guy's probably gonna come back to me, and he did. And you know, it's just one of those nonverbal moments that always plays back in my mind before the play happened. Being in the huddle, I mean, everybody was quiet. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the huddle because we were trying to figure out what Tom was going to call, and then when he called the same play, you know, people were like, okay, we're going to get this thing right this time. So it was a great moment.
Yeah, and they say it's a game of inches, and Ruffin talked about, you know, one more split second, and there's going to be a sack because I'm hanging on for dear life as Tracy Rocker is bearing down on Tommy Hodson. And then, as you said, as the ball takes flight, I mean, it seems like there was all these fingertips that went up that could have.
And you know, and accidentally, I think those fingertips kind of propelled the ball a little bit. You know, it kind of zipped off of them, and it got to me. So once again, man, that was a great play. You know, I'm just kind of honored to having been on the receiving end of that thing because, you know, you hear so many stories of things not working out for teams, and then, you know, guys kind of carrying that for the rest of their lives and all this other stuff. But
unfairly, like had a great career and then had one play that didn't go their way, and that's what they remembered for.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do something right, nobody remembers. Do something wrong, nobody forgets. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And I, you know, I was part of the Buffalo Bills team, so my first Super Bowl was a missed field goal, Scott Norwood. So Scotty carried that for a long time, and you know, we didn't understand, you know, how that could affect a player, and you know, he kind of dropped off the grid for a few years, and then he came back. So it's, you know, it's just a game, but not really.
Right. I think I've joked about that for years. Hey, sports is fun, but LSU football is a matter of life and death.
Absolutely.
And so much pressure on people 18 to 22. But
absolutely.
I think I brought that up the other day to Benny Brazil, who's a track and field coach who played at LSU football, and he's like, well, that's, you know what you sign up for. So there's that end of it as well. So.
Yeah, it is. So, look, I think for most of those guys, you know, once they understand the gravity of it and kind of process everything, they catch up to it. Just like high school to college to the professional level, you catch up, and then you start kind of understanding and processing it and kind of figuring out, you know, how you can, you know, make it work for you. And the most successful guys, I mean, they figure out pretty quick.
All right. The great Eddies of the 80s. Eddie Murphy, Eddie Van Halen, Eddie Fuller.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks so much for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
Class act.
Okay.
Always good to see you. Bye.